Hello and welcome to Alienate UK with your hosts, Andy and Nicole. Please put all questions in caps and start with an emoji.
Let's go. Let's go.
Super chat and super stickers are now active.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Alienate UK. I'm joined by my wonderful assistant and co-host, Nicole, Mark, Ollie Anderson. I'll explain that later.
Hey.
And the wonderful Frankie Adao. So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming on.
Everybody.
So I'll
Hey, how you doing?
I'll explain everything about why Mark's now called Ollie. Is because when I'm doing the thumbnails, I just steal photos off Facebook. Because if you lot are daft enough to put them on, I'm cheeky enough to nick them and use them. So that's how it goes.
I don't think a more British sentence was ever uttered.
So I'm scrolling through Mark's looking for a picture of just him, and I found one, right? So we've had this thumbnail for probably about 2 months now, however long. Anyway, he messages me last night. Andy, that's not me. That's my mate, Ollie. I'm like, what? I'm like, what the fuck? So I sent him a voice note. All right, I'll change it now. And that's where PixArt comes in, because it was just, So, But I said it when he goes, what is it he said? Am I that ugly? You have to use a photo of somebody else.
That's great.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Whenever I have a photograph of just myself. Yeah.
Now I
No, he's about 6'4".
But I thought, well, he's on a mountain, so it looks good, so I'll use that.
Mm-hmm.
Not him. But anyway. Yeah. Right. So funny. I know it was so funny. So, couple of updates. I had a thought was Saturday doing some editing. When we do a Fridays as of May, this is how it's going to run. So I feel it's time to start giving back to you guys and girls that regularly support the channel and what we do as a whole. So as of May 2025, any streams on a Friday, whether it's live, recorded, in the studio, or out and about, sorry, I've just got to wait for it to catch up, will only be available to YouTube members and Patreon paid members. So every single stream as of the 2nd of May this year that goes out on a Friday is just members only, regardless of what tier you're on. It does have to be the paid one. It can't be the free one, because that's not fair, because then anyone can join. So I think that's a fair cut. 2 years of people helping and supporting the channel. So there it is. We're at the point now where we can actually do that. So it's all good.
Sounds good. That's a good way to give back to the members.
Yeah, because I think it's been something that's I've been trying to sort out, but not been able to do it because Wednesdays and Fridays have been too regular. But now Fridays are going to be like one a month or one every 6 weeks. But they're going to be different to how we used to do it. We're still going to do like the stuff like this, the panel stuff and all that kind of stuff thing. But then when we're out and about, like at conferences and all that, they're the ones that are going to go out to members only. So, and that's pretty much it. So anyway, welcome Frankie, welcome Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
You are more than welcome. So for those of you who are not scared at the moment, these are two paranormal, or is it paranormal?
Parapsychology.
Parapsychologists. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was worried when I invited them both on at the same time. I'm even more worried now that we're actually sat here live. So, yeah.
Why are you worried?
We're going to psychoanalyze. You think we're going to psychoanalyze you?
yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, I'm just going to sit
how's
here
your childhood,
watch.
Andy?
Say again?
So how was your childhood? We'll start from the start.
No, you do not want to go there.
To lay down on the couch.
Lay down.
Yeah.
We'll all be laid down. No one will ever get up again. You'll all be doomed forever. It'll just destroy you, honestly. No, so thank you for coming on. So what have you guys been up to? I know Frankie is always posting Instagram, Facebook, constantly out and about doing stuff. Do you have time to breathe?
Believe it or not, the chaos becomes so comfortable that I thrive and I work in total chaos all the time. So it's just like about pivoting, you know what I mean? And social media, it doesn't take as long, you know what I mean? It's just it's a post, so it's not like I'm writing a dissertation, you know what I mean? It takes 2 seconds. And we gotta get the word out about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your videos though have been on point lately, I have to say.
Well, so little funny story. If nobody has seen that last video with the background, that's my so my landlord has a garage that's like kind of attached to the house, and it's absolutely in shambles inside. So I was like, well, that's great for a paranormal backdrop. Let me try it and see what happens. And it worked. Am I breathing in like black mold? Probably.
I think you found your new studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to do it until he finishes it, until he decides he wants to redo it. Might as well.
Like, can I have those boards,
I was thinking about that. I'm like, well, if he redoes everything, maybe I'll just have something like that built so I could put it in my office in the background.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Just stick a new lock on it so he has no access to it. And say, don't know what you're on about. No idea.
And he's trying to get me evicted from my house.
That's because he wants you to come live with him in the UK.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to it right now. Right now, I would not be opposed to it.
Yeah.
Yes. We're going to be meeting soon anyway, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Couple months.
Yeah.
Yes. Twice.
Mark, you'd have to come over too.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
where are
need
you
to come to
meeting?
the US.
Is it a conference coming on, isn't there?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
is it a conference? I don't actually know what it is.
It's kind of, I don't think they don't really term it as like a paracon. It's the Battlefield Bash. So they have like an expo, they have talks, they have a lot going on. It's pretty much a convention.
There we go. And a lot of investigating in the middle of the night and early hours.
You will get arrested if we're on the battlefield in the middle of the night and you're
I
peeing on
found battlefields can be.
But my hotel is on the battlefield. Surely they can't arrest me for staying in a hotel.
No, but if you're in the park.
Well, I might just
Is that really? It's really that you'll get arrested?
Did you not hear about when me and Lisa almost got arrested for being in the orchard?
No.
The police rolled up and they were like, what are you doing here? It's after dark. And we were like, someone told us we could be here. And they're like, who? So we just threw out names.
You should have said your mum and ran off.
But then how do you investigate it at night?
You can't. You can do it like dusk, and they give you like a little bit of a grace period. But if you're there at like midnight, they're gonna come kick you out.
What? Why? If you're making a mess and graffitiing and vandalizing stuff, then yeah, I get that. But if you're just walking about filming,
I don't know.
anyway,
National Park.
they'd have to catch me. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, you know,
I know they do have guns, so yeah.
The Lost
they probably
Explorers, the Lost Explorers will be tend to, you know.
Yeah,
I'll just leave it at that.
we'll be fine. We'll be fine. So
You know,
yeah,
now that
we're
it's
gonna
getting
bring
warm
that.
out.
Because I once got. Yeah,
Say
I
again,
once got had issues with the police. Yeah, sorry, my connection's a bit slow today. Are you able to hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
No. Yeah, there was one time a friend of mine organized a skywatch, and unbeknownst to her and everybody else, she did it in one of the biggest dogging locations in Scotland. And myself and my friend were sitting in the car, and the police came and chapped on the door, thinking that we were dogging. And
Oh my god!
we had to explain. And I actually thought I panicked and said, "Oh, we're here to look at the meteor shower." And the police officer looked up at the sky, and it was completely clouded over. And he went, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he actually just let us go. And the guy I was with was this guy who is a really good friend of mine, but he's also 75, and he's got long ponytail hair. And we were sitting down having a hobnob, cut a biscuit, talking about reincarnation, and just like, how do you explain this? We're in this Scottish biggest dog area in Scotland with a hobnob biscuit, and over. So yeah, that's probably one of the worst skywatches I've ever been on. But it's a funny story.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Oh,
I'm gonna need
right.
I'm gonna need like a before I come over to the UK, like a book or something that I can study for terminology and all that kind of stuff. So
no, it doesn't matter because you can travel from one county to another. You travel from one county to another in less than 40 minutes. Speak completely different like local lingo.
Mm-hmm.
Some phrases mean one thing in one place and some are totally different in the other.
So
all you need to know is they like the C word and don't throw up the peace sign.
Yeah.
I know about the C word.
Well,
and I'm looking forward to be able to use that pretty frequently while I'm over there. Because
trust me, you'll use it regard whether you like it or not. It'll just be natural.
That works for me.
Yeah. So
there's guys in the Highlands that use the C word as a verb.
Right.
As a verb?
Which is they put an ing after the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they put an ing after that.
Oh, they stick a Y at the end of it.
I've seen them use it as a verb.
They stick a Y at the end of it.
I've never heard it used as a verb.
Right. Not here.
Yeah.
No.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what it would mean as a verb here.
It's just come and chat, isn't it? Really?
We're just
It doesn't need to be an insult.
Yeah, it's hard to get insulted by having that word thrown at you that now because you hear it that much. It kind of just means nothing.
So when Andy, you come over, just keep dropping it because you're the only one that's going to not get like a head turn or like an eye roll or like be scolded because everyone expects that, but if Frankie and Nicole kind of do that, it's not going to go over as well.
It's a
I don't
regular
know.
Friday night.
Regular Friday night.
It could also be
Fra-
it could actually be a compliment as well. Like you can actually put in, like, say for example, this guy's a good CUNT.
Oh yeah.
And it's actually meant as a compliment.
But
So,
it's like
yeah,
it's like the word bollocks.
It's a bit strange.
Depending how you use it and where you phrase
Right.
it.
Right.
If something's bollocks, it's crap. If it's a dog's bollocks, it's good. There's
Wait,
many more.
That's good.
Yeah. If it's a dog's bollocks, it's like
Yeah.
up there.
I would think the dog's bollocks would be bad.
No, they're
No,
the best,
it's
apparently.
good, but if you say that something is bollocks, yeah.
It's
But if you
crap.
say something is bollocks, then it's rubbish. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't know why it's come into.
Well, then I'm gonna have to get something that tells me what not to say to make me sound like an American tourist, because it's gonna be all over the place. Like people are gonna be like, there goes one.
Yep.
So I
Start
want to
practicing your accent.
right. I want to be like shock them so they see this American, and then I start dropping all this terminology, and they're like, you're welcome to come back.
I will write you a dictionary for when you come over. There you go. I'll just do a list of words. It'll either have a tick or a cross.
Don't set me up either,
I won't.
Andy. I don't trust you.
I promise I won't. I'll keep it legit. Yeah.
And Andy's gonna talk in an
I'm-
American accent the whole
There was
time he's
actually
here.
I can only do a Texan accent, and that's
You
awful.
can't do a
That's
Texan
bollocks
accent
as well.
either.
No, I can't. Yeah. So
That was it, by the way.
what was it?
Didn't you just do the
No.
Texas?
That
it
was
sounded
my
like
own.
you started.
No.
He's like, that was just me. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Unless it just snuck out. I don't know. If unintentional, I apologize to everyone in Texas. And there's a lot of people there. So
See, this is why we need 2 hours for this episode, because we're
Ah.
20 minutes in and all we've talked about was the C word.
pretty much, yeah.
We do
It's
have
easy.
a question
Yes, we do.
if we want to
wanna
get
do it?
serious for a second. Yeah.
Go on.
Nickname wants to know, it would be interesting to find a common correlation Mark and Frankie have found with their witnesses/clients. What phenomena is most prominent, i.e. UFO, spiritual, etc.?
Well, I'm gonna, yeah. The one thing I'd probably say is that I'm not really, I wouldn't class myself as a parapsychologist. I'm trying to do study counselling because of what the issues I'm seeing with the paranormal. The issues I'm having, what issues I've been mainly focused on, is people that have issues with the UFOs and have not been able to process what they've seen. But I'm just beginning my journey. I'm only in my first year at college to do it, so it's still early days for me. But so Frankie will know a lot more than I will.
Well, not necessarily, Mark, because which I always find that interesting, because here you can't go to school for parapsychology. It's a fringe kind of science. So like if you go to our college's university, the only thing that you would be able to like major in and get degrees on is psychology. So but the way that I feel about it is, and I don't do too much with like UFOs, aliens. It's more of in the way of spirit, people that may have passed or in other realms. And the way that I approach it is more from like a cultural competency aspect, because science is always going to say it's psychosis. But what's interesting is when you're working with people, let's say with schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia, it's people who are in different, different demographics, and the commonality and the similarities of their experiences are super fascinating. And that's kind of what led me to get into the paranormal, was the work that I was doing. Who are we to say culturally? There are some cultures that being able to tap into paranormal is a gift. So why do we, especially in the US, why do we look at it like it's psychosis? So, I mean, and they do mirror each other. Don't get me wrong. They do mirror each other. But I think we need to, that commonality that the question asker is asking is like, what's the commonality? It's very similar. It's very, very similar. So it can be hard to discern like which is which, because people hear things and see things when they're in psychosis, but they also hear and see things if they're gifted, like a medium or a sensitive or clairvoyant. They're experiencing almost the same thing as somebody with psychosis.
And the biggest thing that's come out recently, the biggest thing that's come out recently has been the telepathy. Sorry, I think I've got a delay with my internet. I think the things with autism nowadays is really fascinating, especially the telepathy tapes. I don't know if if you listen to some Gary Nolan stuff, but he's saying like schizophrenia and autistics seem to have this ability to tap into the paranormal. And my youngest son is actually non-verbal autistic, and there has been once or twice he's demonstrated some abilities, not like the way that's seen in Kai Dickens' show, but certainly some things that are quite unusual.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel the same way as you, Mark.
I'm going to switch my camera off. So I'm going to switch my camera off. I'm struggling to get. I think there's a time delay. I'm just going to be a second. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. No, you're all right. Can I just do a little add-on on that question? So how do you guys differentiate between like a clairvoyant, clairadio, and someone that's imagining what's going on? Surely it can't be that easy, or is it, to work out what's actually happening?
So in the United States, we have what's called right there. It's called the DSM-5. So in the DSM-5, it's a diagnostic criteria manual that is used everything that we do when it comes to either diagnosing somebody or identifying like criteria. So something like schizophrenia, the criteria may be that this person is experiencing auditory or visual hallucinations over a time period. So it could be like over 3 to 6 months with what they always say is, when it comes to psychosis and things like that, that it's not substance use related, because there's substance use psychosis that happens when people are using illicit substances. So when you remove that, and then you put the timeline, like the time frame for the criteria on top of it, then it becomes more like, then you can identify, okay, well, this is clinical. Because most people who have paranormal experiences, they're not getting that 24 hours a day, 365. It's moments that they're getting. Where psychosis, somebody who has visual or audio hallucinations, it doesn't stop.
Right.
There is no break. So that's how you kind of separate the two of it being psychosis paranormal. Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're trying to do with the is it the Order of St. Michael? Is that what it's called?
Yes. So recently working was brought on by the Sacred Order of St. Michael's Order of Exorcists. So they're bringing me on to do just that, to see if what they're experiencing from a religious standpoint, whether it be demonic oppression, demonic possession, I go in, I work with the person first to rule out if it's psychosis, if it's a mental health issue. And it's all clinical assessments that I have to do. Then it goes to the local church, and then it goes to the archbishop and the archdiocese. They have to look over all the assessments to see, is this person experiencing just a mental health, situation? And then they take my assessments, and then they kind of look at it and say, okay, it's just a mental health issue, or let's start with that, which they always will start with a mental health proponent, because they want to make sure if they're doing this, that the person is as stable as they can be mental health wise, because it could be traumatic experience, So I work with I'm working with clients prior to a rite of exorcism, then during, and then I'm going, like, I'll be in actual exorcisms, just to make sure that everybody, whether it be the client or the people that are doing it, the clergymen and all that kind of stuff, that everybody's mental health is being looked at while they're doing some other stuff. So interesting work.
Yeah, I've got another question for that. Just quickly, Matt's going to be back on in a minute. He's just going to jump on his laptop, so he's just in the middle of logging in. So, but with you saying like the ones with the mental health issues, do you think it's possible though with them, even though it's like hallucination, that they could manifest something that then becomes real?
Right.
Could that happen? I've been having, because I'm fairly new to the order. I'm still learning about it and how what I do kind of plays into it. But I'm often, when I'm speaking to the team, I'm often conflicted, I guess is the, for lack of a better term, because it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Just like when somebody asks me, what comes first, mental health or substance use? If you ask my opinion, generally mental health is the precursor. Yeah.
And that's why people use substances, because they're self-medicating mental health stuff. I also think that in the realm of what I'm doing now with the order, people, like, looking at it from a cultural standpoint, that people who are having mental health, especially unaddressed psychosis or issues, that it can open the door to stuff on the spiritual side. So yes, I think maybe they can manifest it. They can, then that's through like mental health, and not necessarily psychosis where you're hearing and seeing visual, hallucinations, just mental health in general, even neurological, even neurological stuff can lead to, some of that coming through.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, Frankie. I'm a big fan of like Gabor Mate, for example.
Right.
And he's saying the exact same thing, that people who are self-medicating are actually generally are taking drugs that are trying to self-medicate.
Right.
And the one thing that I'm really interested in, I'm sorry I've missed a lot of the conversation, but one thing I'm really interested in, I don't know about your views, Frankie, is that Mate goes on to say that for us to actually have successful interventions of people who have drugs, we have to really be compassionate, and it seems to be self-compassion and also compassion as a society, which I am really for. But the one thing, kind of going on to that, and going back to the telepathy tapes and autistics, is there's actually a guy called Simon Baron Cohen, and his cousin's Sacha Baron Cohen. He's a chap who does Ali G and stuff like that. Simon Baron Cohen has wrote a book about 20 years ago called The 0 Degrees of Empathy, and in it was talking about people like how the Nazis, how could they could actually reduce empathy in people, and he also went on to say about the relation between psychopaths and autistics, in that they're the exact opposite. Psychopaths have zero empathy, but they can fake it. They can understand. They can see it. Autistics they're uber empathic, but they're not able to. They're able to be aware of things, and that's where I'm wondering if that's where there's a link between it. Like, say for example, there's a Scottish guy called David Hamilton. I'm trying to get on the Scottish Paranormal podcast, and he's talking about empathy and links between people. Seems to be where there seems to be like some sort of like unconscious connection, some sort of connection towards people. That's one thing I'm wondering about. Is it our immense empathy that allows us to have these paranormal connections that are seen in that are seen in things like the telepathy tapes? I don't. It's just a theory, Frankie. But what's your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, in what I do, because clinical therapy is just another word for social work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, social work is the broader, like the umbrella that everything else is under. And I think most really good social workers are very empathic. Mm-hmm. That's why we have things like empathy burnout in this field and things like that we have to be mindful of, because we're almost putting ourselves in that person's perspective of what's going on. We have to cut off our own judgment to what we think. So part of it is literally, kind of taking on what that would feel like for somebody. And then there's one step further from an empath, which is highly sensitive people. I'm trying to look up the doctor, but I can let you guys and your guests know. The highly sensitive people are like empaths to the 10th degree. So where an empath would be like, we're all four of us are in a room together, and we're like, some of the empaths in the room are feeling each other's vibes and that kind of stuff. A highly sensitive person experiences that, but they also experience things like world events, the environment, tragic events, like maybe like a 9/11. Somebody, people on the East Coast, we experienced it basically hands-on, but the people in other parts of the country were not directly in the demographics of it. So a lot of highly sensitive people would, if they're not even around the situation physically, it's almost like they're right there, like they're a victim of it. So that would also open up, a ton of paranormal activity within somebody, or even psychosis. Like mental health psychosis. So, but I think empaths, being tapped in, because like Mark said, not everybody, it's a misconception that everybody is an empath. We all have the ability to feel and all that kind of stuff. But an empath, it's a little bit more than just feeling. It's not sympathy for somebody. It's a connection. And not everybody is big enough to have that empathetic compassion to somebody. So I think that's,
and a lot of times I feel like empaths don't have an option. They feel what other people are feeling, unless they learn to shield themselves very well and put up these walls. It's hard for them to go into like crowded places because they're feeling everything from everybody.
Right.
And it's that gut feeling as well that they get.
Yeah.
So and when you get that, you can't turn it off. It's there and it's happening, and you kind of just got to deal with it, haven't you, I suppose?
There's what's really interesting from counselling is how much it's actually that's what we are actually trying to be trained on. I don't think you can be taught it, but we're trying to be trained by having almost a weekly counselling session. We counsel and they and we also get counselled. And what they actually talk about it is this is genuinely in the textbooks to say that you have to display advanced empathy. And one of the criteria of advanced empathy is hunches or intuition. So it's almost like they're trying to say it in not so many words, is actually talk about things like, it's almost like going for another step towards a psychic connection, basically. So that's something I think is really interesting, is actually looking at things like empathy and compassion and having these things as a way of having paranormal phenomena, basically. This has been something I've been very interested in the past year or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and people like me and Mark are susceptible to running low on that empathy, which is like we have here in the United States. I'm not sure about the UK, but in any type of mental health position, we have same thing like Mark was saying, we have what's called weekly supervision. So it's almost like a therapy session like for the job on like what you're experiencing and stress.
An outlet for you
Correct.
to like almost cleanse yourself, isn't it?
Right. And it's necessary. It is necessary because our job is to disconnect who we are and then stay present for the person. And if we can't disconnect because of our own stuff, then there's transference, countertransference that goes on between you and the client and the patient. That gets really, it gets really messy and beyond ethical kind of bonds that were adhered to through like our state and our national social worker boards. So it's there's a process and a reasoning for that, and I can attest to it. I don't think there's one mental health person, clinician, Mark can talk about it too, that doesn't experience that, especially in the work that I do, because for my private practice, it's behavioral mental health stuff. But in my regular job at Rutgers University, I'm in forensics. So I work in the prison system. So it's a totally different culture. So like I literally do have to disconnect myself and be present for them. But then when I leave, it's like I could curse, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like if I was in that situation myself, like I would freak out. I would freak out because it's such a intense environment. And you do see that there's like, you're trained, they train you in the Department of Corrections, especially here in the United States, to turn that off. You don't usually have empathy for another inmate.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's a different type of environment. So it's especially beneficial for me to have those supervisions, because I'm also hearing and their experiences of being in that prison system. And when I come out and I can turn myself back on, it's like, you know what I mean? You almost like feel like it, almost like once you turn it on, it almost like rushes into you. So it's like you do need an outlet to process.
So we have HIPAA. I'm sure in the UK, do you have something similar, Mark, where privacy laws?
There's what we have something called the BCP, which is like there's a Scottish version of that as well, but the BCP is like kind of a counselling body, a government body, of which you actually have to, there's guidelines and ethical guidelines that you have to stick by. And what Frankie's saying as well is that things like being able to make sure you have like professional relationships with the counsellor and the client, basically. And that's not just anything sexual, it's also anything like where just getting too involved with the person. That is a real issue. Another thing I did about 10 years ago was I was a Samaritan, which is a crisis counsellor over in the States. And one thing that they did, the Samaritans actually taught prisoners how to speak to other prisoners, because they're having that issue with the lack of empathy and lack of having to connect to people. It's I couldn't imagine working in that. That's especially as a social worker, Frankie. That's a really good job that you do. So
It's fascinating. I always tell people I don't have a boring job, and what makes it even more fascinating is that the people that I work with in the prison system actually have diagnosed opiate use disorder. So it's like another layer on top of it. But when I'm sitting there and I'm doing an assessment with somebody, automatically when they're talking to me, my mind always goes to paranormal. Always is like, how can I rule this out, even if I'm going through criteria? Okay. Because I have experience of working in the paranormal, it's like I literally have to be conscious about looking at it either from a clinical, like if I'm in that role, right? Like at my job, my role is clinical. It's not paranormal, right? So like I have to keep that hat on when I'm working and try not to get caught up in like, is this really paranormal? Like, how do I tell this person I maybe think that it's paranormal? I can't, but what I can do that with the paranormal work that I do. I'm doing a study, trying to start it up. Every time I try to start it up, like something new comes my way and I postpones it. But working with people that have experienced or are experiencing paranormal activity and the trauma that gets attached to that, to see if I can use like clinical trauma-based modalities and interventions to apply it to like a paranormal trauma. So yeah.
I think that would be crazy if you're sitting there and like you're listening to somebody and they're like, I see a man in my house every night, like trying to balance like, oh well, there's probably not a man in your house, or like, let me get my equipment and we'll find out.
Yeah, have you set night vision cameras up?
I would if it wasn't like breaking every HIPAA ethics that I'm bound to. I would love to do some research on that. You know, I'm also doing some stuff with spirit.
Yeah,
actual doing like spirit trauma-based therapy, because we kind of exploit that trauma with them. We don't do that with the living. We feel like it's not nice to exploit somebody's trauma, but in the paranormal, like we look at it like, oh, it's okay. We can ask like, how, like you got shot? How was that like? You know what I mean? Like that's not how we would, and Mark can attest to this. Like that's not how you trauma in a clinical setting. There's a way to have a session that's open, that they process, and then we kind of like try to wrap it up. So when they leave, they're not left with all these open wounds. We don't do that with spirit.
No, we don't. And do you know one of my real bugbears is if you go in a paranormal investigation and you get people that try to provoke spirit, and that's a real bugbear of mine, because it's kind of going into what you're saying, Frankie. They are kind of crossing that line where sometimes I've heard it's been quite traumatic. So yeah, that's I've never even thought about having trauma therapy for the deceased, but it's a really interesting avenue.
Right.
Do you know what's quite interesting as well is that a lot of people who started off in psychoanalysis were really interested in the paranormal, like Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung. There's another chap called Albert Adler, the
Yes.
chap who, yeah, he did the small penis envy stuff. I
Right,
don't know
right,
anything about, I don't know anything about that though. And he was
Oh, I do.
yeah, and he actually worked with Aleister Crowley, and there was a number of them. There was Sigmund Freud created up something called the Vienna Club, and
Right.
that the Wednesday Club in Vienna, and a lot of the people who were involved with that, especially at the start, had an interest in the paranormal, but the biggest one by far was Carl Jung, whose grandfather was used to put a chair out to speak to his first wife, much to the dismay of his second wife. It's actually crazy just how much they were interested in the paranormal. So yeah, there's
Right.
definitely other links between the paranormal and psychology and psychoanalysis.
Right, right. And which I wish so bad that I was from like the UK, that I can go to school to do this like on a professional level. Like I'm hoping, because since I work for Rutgers University, we're a major university here in the United States, big on research and all that. So I'm like chomping at the bit to get this study done, because I would like to present it to, we even have folklore professors at Rutgers University. So like to tap into some of them to like, how do we kind of like, if we're talking about folklore on a higher educational level, collegiate level, why are we not talking about paranormal? Why are we're acknowledging folklore, and the paranormal is generally part of that. So why are we not looking at it like from a science?
Get it going, Frankie. I'm signing up. I want to do a parapsychology class.
Have you looked at Walter Scott, Frankie?
No.
So
what
Walter
was it? Walter Scott?
So Walter Scott was kind of like he was like the big name of writing in the 19th century.
Okay.
And he was Scottish guy, and he's actually got a house down in the Scottish borders. And as soon as you walk into like the area, like the visitor area, the first thing that you'll see is things regarding folklore. And what he did is he took like Scottish folklore, like things like animal, like beings that could change into different, like shape-shifting beings. There was one thing that's quite famous, something called the Kelpies, which are like horses, and they're demonic horses. Like they'd lure you to get on them, and then they would jump into the water and drown you. And there's also other beings as well. And what Scott did, he took these folklores from all over Scotland, and then what he did from there was he actually wrote about them, and it was actually one of the very first works of its kind. But what was really interesting is that the belief in Scotland, whether this is true or not, certainly for Mary Shelley, because she lived in Scotland, she lived in the same town I did for a while, they seem to influence that sort of Victorian Gothic horror. So things like Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley. So a lot of the things that we see today that actually seem to be influenced by things like zombies or vampires actually have their root with Walter Scott, because he influenced it. So we actually see that not only the folklore actually have its roots in the paranormal, but again, like psychoanalysis with Jung and how he influenced Joseph Campbell, the folklore has actually influenced how we see things on like our fantasy. And it's a really fascinating element of study. It's really, really interesting.
And I think we need to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do more of that. I think it will, for lack of a better term, normalize the paranormal.
Yeah.
From a scientific method. My fantastical concept of this whole thing is wrapped around intelligent activity with spirit. Because if they can use disembodied voices, they can use poltergeist activity to move things. That's brain. That's brain power. So I've started doing like EMDR sessions. Do you know what
I laugh every time you say
emotional, it. That's emotional. It's something to do with emotional. It's not the modality that I trained in, but
it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So it's like using bilateral stimulation to move the trauma from the back of the brain to the front of the brain. So you can like in EMDR sessions, you're slowly moving the trauma responses from the back to the front. And over time, when you do that, you say to people like, when you're thinking about the trauma, what color do you see? Like, what color are you getting? What smell? What all that kind of stuff that's associated with trauma response, like trauma triggers. And then as we bring that we reprocess it. So when you're starting to be able to process the trauma, now what color are you seeing? What smell are you getting? What, vibe or feeling and all that kind of stuff. So I do that I've done it a couple of times with spirit in a paranormal situation. And I'm not a psychic, I'm not a medium, I'm not a conduit or anything like that. So I have to rely on a lot of the times either people who have that skill or finally developed ITC devices. And the friends of ours, Nicole and mine, we were are genius and groundbreaking doing what's called the digital seance experience. They use it's so fascinating, and I will screw up how it all works, but I started using them doing this, and it was almost like I was getting responses from a client doing a trauma session.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's incredible. I've seen it.
Is it that good now? Sorry.
No, just there's something similar that I'm aware of. It's very similar to hypnosis, something called NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and they have a similar technique where they get people to kind of relive their trauma and then imagine seeing it in maybe a television, like so they're watching it, and then imagine taking the color out, so it's a black and white television, and it's reducing the process. My main job, I'm what's called a data engineer, and what data engineers are, they take data from different places and put it all together so it can actually be monitored. It doesn't really sound that interesting, but the reason there's been a massive push in the past 2 years because of AI. The AI really needs a lot of data and qualitative data for it to work. And more than AI, I think that how using devices is actually probably the way forward for the paranormal. There's a type of technology called IoT nowadays, and what IoT is, it's actually very simple. It's just you have a lot of devices, but they have sensors on them, and these sensors can cover the entire electromagnetic spectrum, everything from radio waves to all the way to ultraviolet. The problem is that you wouldn't be able to actually you'll be able to get the information, but the EM spectrum is so vast that you wouldn't be able to actually fully monitor it. But what you can do is you do have the potential to do it all. And there's also other things that are quite nice little tricks, like say for example, Boeing aircraft, they actually fly and they actually detect this vibrations, and they put it through to a database using IoT, so you can listen to sound or vibrations. So even if the slightest thing's off, you'll be able to detect that in a database. And that's where I think things like that are really important, because we'd actually be able to get to be able to monitor something for days and days on end, and find micro variations on things.
Yeah. Do you say about IoT then? I've got LED lights and that in the studio, and a few Wi-Fi plugs and that, and it actually comes up as IoT. Yeah. So I use my phone to turn them on and off, or I can use voice control on them. I wondered what IoT was. Now I
Yeah,
know.
I mean,
Well, kind
yeah.
of know.
It's mean Internet of Things, but what the beauty of it is, the say for example Microsoft, where I'm more knowledgeable on, they have a platform where you can literally put in millions of devices that can connect to it, and all these devices will have sensors on them. So you can have things almost like little bird trap sensors that you maybe have, like maybe something with video, and then put that through. And nowadays you can actually monitor these things real time and set up alerts. So if you see, for example, something flying across the sky, you would be able to, if you had it set up in the right way, you'd be able to actually detect it and then actually say this is maybe an anomaly. So there's the vast amount of potential in this sort of data is unbelievable, and the fact there's literally millions of these devices could be put in worldwide would mean that we could look at some really cool things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if they were responding like how it goes in a clinical session, I wouldn't even waste time. But from the first time I sat and I did a session like this, I got responses. And it wasn't just me in the room, it was the people running this this direct radio voice is what they call it. And it's the like white noise that's being processed in real time. So it's just white noise. There's no radio frequencies, there's no sweeping or anything. The quality of the communication is so clear and like nothing I've seen before. So that actually helps me do my job, work spirit, and doing trauma work with them, because now I get a clear connection and I can say, well, it's not just by happenstance that it's from a sweep on a radio channel. There is none of that. So its likelihood is higher that it is in a paranormal response. So then why would we not treat spirit for trauma the way that we clinically treat somebody of the living?
Shout out Ron and Lourdes, by the way, for the digital
Right.
seance experiment.
Yes.
Right.
Experience.
Yeah, right. But it would be even more fascinating to take that IoT technology to be able to really, besides like the communication, like verbal communication, to see like how like environment changes when we're talking about trauma. Is it different than when we try to communicate them about non-traumatic stuff, what they like to do? Will there be a shift in the room rather than when we're doing trauma-based work, which is heavy? So that would be fascinating.
But that would come back then to the split experiment if something's being observed, or something similar to that anyway.
Actually, that's a good point. So there was something I've been thinking about is I actually asked Jim Segala, who worked on Skinwalker Ranch, this. There's a type of modeling that you can do in computing, and it's run like millions of times and try to get the same number. And what actually happens is that at Skinwalker Ranch, people like Travis Taylor have been running these programs over and over again, and they're getting the same numbers sort of relatively consistently. Now, it would be really hard for this to be any some sort of it would be hard to fake it, because the way that they actually generate numbers in computers now is actually really random. It used to be for years it was actually difficult to randomize numbers, but nowadays it's easy, and they've been using this technique to randomize numbers, and they keep on saying the same thing. So I checked with my friend who's a quantum physicist. I was this token dumb friend of that group, and he actually said, no, this is actually an element of superposition. That's actually what's been happening. So It's almost like IT numerology using or quantum physics numerology using the Monte Carlo experiment, and I thought it was absolutely amazing.
Well, we can actually ask this question next week because we've got Trey Hudson coming on from Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay.
Nice.
So, yes. So I need to write this down because I will forget.
But this is why science is so important to the validity of paranormal, parapsychological, because we're like, just in that conversation, there's evidence that we can marry the two, and do some work, from a scientific method perspective and standpoint. A lot of what we do can utilize technology like that to advance what we're experiencing, like maybe on an anecdotal level, making that more valid for people. I think we lose a lot of that with, paranormal entertainment and things like that. So, and I think that's maybe
difficult though, because you need to get people involved and interested to keep, the field going and to keep these places open. But you also want to treat them with respect and, not make it so much about the entertainment. So it's a really fine line there.
Right. And what I've been doing, especially shameless plug at our residency location, the Ritz Theater. What's great about it is that we can come in and do one location. We can really do the work there because we're spending a lot of time there. So when I usually anytime I go into the Ritz, I get there a little earlier. I sit in the main theater, and I talk to Spirit about there may be some questions about your trauma and all that. I almost kind of and I also tell them, listen, you don't need to address that if you don't want to. And then the night goes on, and I'm very cautious, and I'm very aware when people are asking. And I think Nicole could attest to this. We put off of vibe, and we generally no provoking and all that kind of stuff, and people adhere to it. And but then after people leave, I will sit with Spirit again and kind of do a processing, how that makes you feel, and all that kind of clinical stuff that we do in trauma-based therapy, just to make sure that they're, because the purpose why I'm doing that is, over time, Spirit shut down any communication with anybody because their trauma is not being heard. It's being heard possibly, but what you do with it is totally how we would not work with anybody in the mental health that's experiencing trauma. We would handle it and process it the way that it's supposed to be done. So why wouldn't we do that with Spirit? So normally in the Ritz, I'll go in before and then after, just to make sure Spirit's okay. If they need to process anything with me before, shutting the lights off, locking the doors, all that kind of stuff.
That's kind of been a hot button issue lately in a couple of these bigger places. I don't know if you guys have seen the drama. Places like Lizzie Borden House. Right. They're making, TikTok videos, supposedly, making fun of it. And, people come in there with axes and provoke. And that's not how we would treat a living person.
Right. They can't sign a HIPAA. You know what I mean? So even in the work that I do, I've had talked to people like Ron Iacovetti and people that have been in the field a lot longer than I have, and talk about that, because that's my conflict. I often say, people probably think I'm full of shit because they never see anything, but I'm conflicted because that would be the equivalent of me recording a trauma therapy session with somebody and then putting it on social media.
Yeah.
I feel the same way with spirit, but what people are telling me is, yes, they hear what I'm saying, but also the work needs to be put out there. And the only way that people are going to know about the work is if they see it. So generally what I do is it's with a small group of people that I trust that normally are on our team, like Nicole, like Ron and Lourdes, like my partner Anthony, like very small groups that can observe, because on a larger scale, people are going to want to participate, but it's really not appropriate for somebody that doesn't know how to do trauma clinical basis start throwing questions in there that are going just to revert back to the old processing. So so that's like the conflict is like, what do I do with all this, even though I'm finding that there is something there. So I'm trying to like sprinkle a little bit of stuff here and there, but yeah, I just think that we lose sight in paranormal research that we're dealing, like, I'm not talking about like elementals and all that kind of stuff. Those are far and few between. The more of the interaction we get are from people that are no longer here in this dimension, right?
Yeah.
So that's where like our focus needs to be, in bigger locations, because of the fact that over time, spirit is going to shut down that communication, or they're going to communicate it in a way that comes off aggressive, or it comes off angry. And are you really understanding, you know, their perspective of what happened? Mm-hmm. Because they're frustrated, they're pissed off that people keep poking and asking these very personal questions for self-indulgent reasons.
Yeah.
You know?
It must be hard though, Frankie, because like, say if I'm sitting next to somebody and trying to understand what they're going through, first of all, it's going to be difficult to ask open-ended questions when you've got like a EVP device. And the second thing is, there is that sort of like body language understanding now, but I can see in a lot of ways it could be a bit more difficult. I can imagine it'd be easier, but overall it must be quite hard to be able to understand them, understand spirit with the limited interactions, whether it's devices or through medium. It must be just a tad trickier.
Right. That's 100% correct. That's why, like, I'm very careful in my communication with them. Meaning, like, I would never use like a spirit box. Mm-hmm. I'm not using like devices like EMF readers or pods or anything like that. It's strictly communication. Like, there's things that are even apps like Spirit Talker, or which are great. I have no problems with that. But for this type of work, I need to rule out all the possibility that it could be something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so that's why this digital seance experience is a phenomenon that is super helpful to what I do, because again, it's all just white noise. There's not supposed to be any voices in white noise. So when they're responding to a question, timing and relevance, and they're saying words like therapy and how they feel, sad, angry, I mean, and it's pretty quick. That's the communication that I use. So when I'm doing like an actual trauma-based session, like where I'm digging in, it's generally with the TDSE behind me, catching the communications, just because I feel like there's so many possibilities for things to come up in word banks and all that kind of stuff. Like, I need to rule that out, because I want to make sure that the communication with them is intelligent, meaning not even on their end, it's timing and relevance. It matters to or connects to the question that's being asked. But it is difficult. It is difficult, you know. And I think a lot of people in the clinical setting would kind of discard this theory because of the fact that there is no direct communication.
Yes, yeah. It's,
You know,
really... Sorry, Andy, I cut you off there. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I was just going to ask a quick question, if that's all right. This is to all of you. So we was talking about AI earlier, and with what you've just been talking about, Frankie, how long do you think it will be, if at all possible, that AI will be used to communicate to other dimensions? And I mean a direct link. I don't mean a voice coming out preloaded, that kind of stuff, like Siri or Echo or all that kind of stuff, but an actual full-on, I suppose, voice portal.
To not, I don't think technology is right there for the end user right now. Maybe in like business settings and things like that, where AI corporate buys like $1 million AI software. So my team has been using AI digital recorders.
I have it too. Same one.
Oh.
So like right now, you see it's recording.
Yeah.
And then it transcribes.
Oh my. Yes.
So
I need one.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It's fascinating to put this with it in the realm of like a DR60 and all that kind of stuff, and other ITC communication devices. Like I have a it's called a Orion box built by the Holtes, and it's not like a radio. There's no word bank, there's no radio sweep, there's no radio signal. It's all phonetic, so it sounds like ip, ip, up, up, ip, up, up. But if you put that digital recorder with the AI next to it, it will transcribe stuff that is relevant to what you're asking. So that's some of the technology, the advancement of the technology. So, but what I do, it's very hard to use like a digital recorder, because I would have to ask questions, stop, review. There's nothing, you know what I mean? So it's a different type of doing the work. But to answer your question, Andy, the technology is coming out there to the end user. I've actually even done some stuff with AI, like asking spirit questions, like not the normal questions, but what does your hair look like? What does your face look like? What does your body structure look like? Do you have facial hair? Are you a male? Are you female? And then putting it into like something like Night Cafe or something like that that generates AI photos to see like what can we get an image of what they look like. So that's way we can communicate with the people better, you know? So
here's another question then. It might sound stupid. It kind of does in my head already, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Say it.
So AI obviously stands for artificial intelligence. What if the paranormal is that artificial intelligence, and this is our direct contact with it? So whatever we're using for the AI is that gateway.
Like the Terminator 3, where the Skynet's actually was the virus. So there's a couple of things I could actually add to that. That actually I never thought about the idea of using the AI art but I've actually had a couple of meetings with a guy called Nicholas Martin, who's created Project Nanu, and they've gone. So I had a chat with him about a year ago, and whether it's been put in my chat or I'll assume it's not, they've been looking at other things. They're actually looking at some things I was actually speaking about when I spoke about AI 2 years ago. And one of the things would be to use like ChatGPT to get summarization. So where I think AI would be really useful would be to, when somebody's having an experience, one of the things that tends to happen, this is a police trick, is that the closer to the experience you actually get the report, the more accurate it is. So instead of having to wait, like if you ever had to wait for MUFON or something like that, it would take ages. But if you could actually have a AI, like an investigator, actually maybe 2 minutes after you've had an encounter, you'll have a much more accurate report of the paranormal. The Project Nanu, I've started something like that. The other thing, and again, this Jim Segala, I think like NIDS or whatever the equivalent of this have been working on this. There would be to looking at social media data, and that's where the big thing is, looking at the data sources. So social media would be the no-brainer, but there's multiple other ones that could be too long to go into, but social media would actually give a really good indication of the person. So as an example, say for example, somebody, normal guy off the street sees a UFO, and then all of a sudden he starts to look at things like spirituality groups or Reiki or stuff like that. We can see this maybe had a positive effect. But let's say if somebody like talk about Lou Alexandro's book where they've seen a blue orb, and next minute we see things like cancer or disease or something like that, we could determine it's a negative effect. Now, the thing about AI and data is that we can see things that we normally can't see. The best example actually comes from the States, guys. I was actually looking at Walmart. And whenever Walmart actually ever saw people, there was going to be a storm, they ran out of strawberry Pop-Tarts. So every time they started putting every time the storm came over, they started like stocking loads of strawberry Pop-Tarts because that's what people seem to see. And it's these invisible forms of data. Things like maybe people seeing it, the cancer groups are quite obvious, but the minuscule things, the minuscule little changes in people's behavior, that's the thing of interest. That's where you're going to see where AI works and where it's changing it. We're changing people. It's also a scientific thing because if you're seeing behavioral changes in people without anything else other than having a UFO encounter, we can actually see that there's actually changes, actually having psychological changes to people. Another thing that's communicating to other dimensions, if you want to, I would say at minimum 10 years. And where I say is one thing about asking about the question about how long would it be for AI to talk to other dimensions, I would say 10 years. And what we need to wait for is quantum supremacy. There's already been, it was actually a student back about 3 years ago put in TensorFlow. TensorFlow is actually used by Gary Nolan for his MRI scans for the autistic and schizophrenic guys. But he's actually put AI and quantum computing together. But once we've got a quantum computer and AI together, what's going to happen is people have called it the anomaly. Essentially, we don't know what's going to happen. We really don't know. There's specific types of AI that work because AI is a vastly different, it's a vast atmosphere. But we don't know what will happen with AI. It's beyond our knowledge. So if we have that state, we can actually look at things that might be communicating to other dimensions or seeing things. One thing we already see with AI is it thinks differently from us. You'll see people like Jeffrey Hinton, for example, the father, now considered the godfather of AI, is actually saying, no, it doesn't mean artificial intelligence anymore. It means alien intelligence because it thinks so differently. So what would be great is to see how that's actually thinking, then combine that with quantum computing. That again is sort of actually using different dimensions and see what happens. So 10 years is my answer.
Well, right. Well, with you saying that, you guys have got iPhones, yeah?
No.
Oh yeah, I do actually. Yeah,
I have a Droid. I have a Droid.
Get out.
Yeah, right. Forget you Android people and your green bubbles.
So when you use Siri now and you ask it a question that's relevant to what's going on, it'll ask you, do you want to use ChatGPT or the internet? So I've started using ChatGPT and it's a lot more accurate and it's more descriptive than what it would be if you just typed it in on the internet. Because it's like Heathrow Airport was shut down. There's no flights a couple of weeks back, but there'd been a fire at some factory, and obviously the smoke was blown across the runways, so they couldn't have anything landing or taking off. But if you looked on the internet, it's just saying, "Oh, it's shut," because there were signs on the road saying Heathrow Airport closed until further notice. But with Chat GPT, it went into detail when it started, what was going on, the name of the company, absolutely everything. Like, oh my God, it's like game changer, complete
It's
game
crazy.
changer.
It is, because I actually started specifically with people who have communication problems that I work with. Very aggressive in their communication styles, gets them into trouble, especially because they're dealing with things like in my day job, like parole and probation and all these things, that the wrong thing they do, the wrong things they say can be violations and they can go back to prison. So I'm telling people, and I have 2 people that have been doing it, and they're like, Frankie, it works. Communicating with people using Chat GPT, because it'll take their aggressive communication styles and soften it, which helps them in communicating with people, and people taking them a little bit more seriously, because it's not coming off just like an aggressive communication style. So, and I love, people are so against AI. Nicole could attest to this. I love
it.
AI. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a writer, so not so much for that, but for art and for music. And, this is stuff like what Mark is saying. Why wouldn't we tap into, we can't always be afraid of technology. This is it's not a sci-fi movie. I really believe that it's not. It's advancement of technology. I think AI is going to take over the world. No, I don't. It sounds.
If it does, what are we going to freaking do about it? We might as well use it.
Nothing, and it's taking over for a reason, because we can't get ourselves to that level of advancement. So it excited me when really excited me when Mark said just 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years is that's when they believe that quantum supremacy will happen, and they're getting a bit scared of it, because it will be an issue for security, because all your encryptions are all through the window. Have you guys ever heard of augmentative AI?
A what?
No.
Augmentative AI.
No.
So augmentative AI is, so I'm getting a little bit more scared of AI, if I'm honest with you.
No.
Yeah. Now, I think what I think is going to happen is, I think that AI is going to have most of our jobs will be focusing on things like AI. So there'll be things like mining for the AI chip, for the chips for AI. Because all of a sudden you saw like Nvidia became the world's richest company. That's because of, especially companies like Google, taking so many of the chips. The other thing is that AI requires a vast amount of energy. So, like, say for example, these if you were to train thing like ChatGPT, and you try to train it just in a location in Britain, it would take down the entire power grid. Just the amount of power is just phenomenal. Wow. And then the next thing is data. Any form of AI model, like especially the types of supervised learning, which are things like ChatGPT or anything like AI art, they need to be constantly retrained, and that needs high quality data. So I think that what will happen is that our jobs will become mainly data and energy related more than anything else. And I've seen a change in the job market. So things like data stewardship, data engineering, which I do, are all becoming more and more prevalent because of this demand for data to actually serve AI models. Augmentative AI is actually where we actually become. If you guys watch Star Trek, and you like the Borg and the Cybermen from that's sort of like an extreme perverted augmentative AI. But what people who are advocating are saying is we can only be this intelligent, and there's not much more we can be after that. So it would be almost like kind of expanding a part of our intelligence or part of us into an AI system. And that's where augmentative AI is. And there's actually serious talk about that.
Wow.
That is so
it's
all
like
of a sudden,
Elon's chip, right?
Like Elon's chip, yeah, exactly like that. So there's not just one issue. There's not just one benefit from AI. There's multiple. but there's also not just one threat from AI. There's
Right.
loads, and then there's also other things that we just don't know about, like quantum computing and essentially transhumanism. So it's actually it's really exciting, but it's also we've just got to be a little bit careful because it is a bit scary and it will kind of redefine not just technology and society, but also potentially us. So, yeah.
Question for everybody though: if they could put an AI chip in your head right now, like ChatGPT in your head all the time, would you want it?
Yeah, I'll be first in the queue. Of course I
Like,
would.
Here's what I don't remember what movie it was, but there was a movie in like the 90s. Again, I don't remember what it was, but like they basically plugged in and like could learn a language like that. They could learn how to play an instrument like that.
That's the reason. Yeah,
Right.
for that
So
reason, if nothing else.
Right. If it was something to that effect, I would be first in line. I would be first in line.
Or second, technically.
Well, okay, so I'll let Andy go in front of me, because then if it fails and Andy's the first in line, I'll go to the second line.
This is why I need a chip. I didn't think it through.
But if it was that type of like advancement, where I would. But I mean, would I do it now? Like if they said tomorrow you could go and get the Elon's chip? Probably not, because I want to see how I don't want to get it when it's new technology. You know, I want to get it when it's been flushed out and I'm not going to turn into the Terminator.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I would be afraid of, anybody being able to control you with it.
No, but that's the thing. I'd have to have them do like a disclaimer where they can't turn it off so you die. They can't control you. They can't make you do stuff you don't want to do. You'd have to have all these
head.
different
What are you going to do about it after? It's already in your head.
Too late. I've already had it done. No, I don't know. Don't know. But talking about AI and music and all that, we do have some.
Hold on one sec. I want to hear Mark's answer though first.
Oh,
Mark,
sorry, go on. Sorry, Matt.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like it changes what it means to be human being. And to be honest, if it got my thoughts, it would just be about chocolate and like it would be. I'd hate them to be able to see what my thoughts are like. It would just be chocolate and Star Trek.
See, that's why it's important to have Mark on, because he's the voice of reason.
Yeah.
I would in that aspect, Mark, when you put it in that perspective, maybe I wouldn't get the chip because I wouldn't want anybody knowing what's up.
And it's like that movie too, where they'll arrest you for thinking of doing a crime before you do the crime.
Minority Report, that was good, yeah.
But what they don't have access to the data that you're using.
They do.
No, but look, in my version of the chip, they wouldn't have access to it. It'd all be encrypted. Like
that wouldn't work, Candy, because data. What happens is that with current AI models, the AI stagnates. So models stagnate. What actually has to happen is they have to be retrained. So you'd have to have new data. So I'd have to have uploads.
Download,
so you'd have to have
upgrades
constant uploads to work. Yeah.
Can I change my answer? No. Too much arsing about. It's just too much trouble, isn't it?
Well, the benefits from it is there's actually now AI. What we look at AI nowadays is kind of like what we know now, like ChatGPT or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there's another branch. There's actually essentially three families of AI. There's ANI, AGI, and ASI. So ANI is things that you won't even see, things like your emails, for example, predictive text.
Yeah.
AGI is
Sorry, can I just stop you on that? So when I get an email or a text, I get a notification on my phone. I don't know if it's just on the iPhone or what, but it will like whatever the message says, it breaks it down into like one sentence. So I'll open it expecting to read what it says in the notification. Completely different. So say you sent me a message saying, sorry, Andy, that wasn't me in the picture. That's my mate, Ollie. It will say, that picture was of my mate, Ollie. And it will just rephrase it into how I would say it, which is very weird.
Facebook Messenger has started doing that. Like in our group chats that like pop off and I'm at work and then I love that. I'm like, oh, I have a summary of what everybody's saying now.
Summary. That was it.
Right, exactly. Because that does it in my car when somebody sends me like a very long text message or Facebook or WhatsApp message. It'll take it and summarize it.
Yeah, just condense it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but
it only started doing it last week, and it's well weird. It's good. But then you open it and it's not. It's shit. But it doesn't. It should be how you read it. What before it's open.
I use it for note taking. So if I take notes, I'll get ChatGPT to use it. And I'm on the slightly on the autistic spectrum, and also I'm quite dyslexic. So some of my emails are terrible. I'm also into martial arts, and I went to the website for somebody, put it online, and I put mixed martial arts, and he was absolutely furious because it wasn't that type of website. And so things like that, ChatGPT are brilliant. It's really good. And the technology behind Facebook is pretty cool. They've got Llama, and Llama can actually, it can be really big, but you can also get tiny little models. I'd love to see how to use them. I actually put them on an Azure tenancy that I have, and I left the machine on. It cost me a fortune. So I haven't told my wife that, but
now she knows.
So when he comes on next, he's doing a stream from outside. We know what happened.
Okay. Now, Andy, back to what you were saying about AI music.
So someone I know has created some music for Alienate UK. So I'm going to play a little bit first. Let me know if you can hear it. It should be shared, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll just play a little bit now and see what. Let me know.
If you've seen it and believe it.
Yeah, could you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Cool. Right. I'll start it again from the beginning. He says, "This is so fiddly."
Technical difficulties.
Right. Here we go. Yes. Right. So I'm going to play it. Oh, there we go. Just press the back button. It's easier. Right. So this got sent to me at stupid o'clock this morning because of the time difference. So I actually listened to it. I got up to use the bathroom. I just sat in the bathroom and thought, this is actually pretty cool. So that was early hours. So I'm going to play it all. I'm not sure. Is it like 2 minutes?
Yeah.
So
2 minutes.
Can we have a vote on whether it's any good or absolutely shocking? So here we go.
And
You will not offend AI.
Or you just think it's cool, then come and sit down with Andy and Nicole at Alienate UK. Aliens, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, all things strange. Alienate UK. Now you don't have to go very far for us to find a new bazaar. And if you're open to it all, then come and give us a call. Aliens, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, all things strange. Alienate UK. So get yourself a drink and get yourself comfy. Get your feet up, get your slippers on, because we are about to start. Aliens, UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, all things
That's it. That is
I love
actually
it.
quite catchy.
I love it. And
Right? It's so
It's
boppy.
cheesy, but it is.
But here's why I love it. Try to find a song, music that we can apply specifically to what we do.
Yeah. You
You know
can't.
what I mean? That no, you can't. It does, right? You can only like that was great because it basically tells everybody what the show's about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where if you had to pay royalties to get a song, or even like free music archives or something like that, you're not going to get something that specific, right? I love it, love it.
Yeah.
I vote for it, but I'm biased because it's Nicole. So
yeah,
I'm not offended because it was AI. The prompt was literally write a theme song for a YouTube channel about UFOs, aliens, cryptids called Alienate UK.
but that's the thing. So you type in something that already exists, it will search the internet for it and bring it up. Like when we go on another podcast and say, "Can you send me a bio?" Yeah, Chat GPT.
My bio lies.
Can you do a
for
bio for Andy Codes? I'm an award-winning thingy of some Norwegian something or other. I can't even remember what it said.
oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, I've never been to Norway in my life, but I've won awards. So who knows?
Exactly.
Yep.
I tried it and it was all lies.
But
Or
it is what it is.
Or was it manifesting stuff that hasn't happened yet?
Maybe it knows the future.
Yeah.
Oh,
10 years.
Oh, guess what?
We'll
I
find
just
out
searched
in 10 years. We'll find out in 10 years.
Yes, there you go, Mark.
Frankie, you'll like this because I just did it. And in April 2025, she is scheduled to lead a Hot Topics breakout session at the Parasite Experience event. It's talking about it picked up the Para Summit.
Are you serious?
That's crazy.
Yep.
Oh.
It got
Now I want to. Now
want to
after the show, I'm gonna be like,
yeah.
That's so fascinating.
It meshed up the haunted My Haunted Manor one with the Para Summit, but it kind
But
of
you
got
can
it.
kind of pull the
Yeah.
messaging. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do.
Yeah, it was.
AI
Some people
bios of
really
everybody.
didn't like it. It was like European pop.
It was
Very,
I don't know.
very, very late 80s, early 90s, like synth.
Yes.
pop.
Yes. Yes.
But
It's
that's
like
coming
electronic.
back. That's coming
Yes.
back. She's
I know.
like one of my favorites. But Lady Gaga's new album is all synth pop from.
Is it?
Yeah. It's great, but it's got a throwback vibe to it.
Ah.
So I'm curious because I can't see comments. Who said it's not
Well,
good?
Everybody.
Darren and Simon both said it's shite. Yep.
Mhm.
Dead Fish put some Russian dancing. That Baby put don't polish your turd, it was shite. That's right. Simon, I'm a music critic. Brackets, it was shite. Cass has put reminded me of an anime intro. Yeah, kind of is. So yeah,
Well,
it's like Street Fighter back on the console, like Nintendo.
Okay, gotcha.
It was that kind of like the 8-bit,
like very like
Yeah.
8-bit kind of vibe to it. Well, Nicole has put an hour. Nicole has put an hour private chat. I'm assuming it's AI stuff, but
Yes.
what caught my interest is it said that I was a co-host of your show.
So I'm just reading it now. It's like 4 bits.
It does say that. Like it takes little bits. It's like, oh, Frankie's gonna be on Alienate UK. He's the co-host.
Right.
Maybe it is telling the future.
Additionally, he co-hosts the Alienate podcast.
Right. I love you guys, but I have way too much on my plate.
In-depth discussions, is that?
I know. We still have to go out urban exploring.
I know.
All right. It has Mark Anderson as a pianist, a former Arizona state legislator, a former NFL defensive end.
You kept this quiet.
That's right.
I'm trying
That's why
to. I'm
you have
actually
to-
trying to chat to you. Yeah, I'm trying to chat to you myself. I'm an
He's
author and
actually,
paranormal investigator.
Oh,
That's why you have to keep
I
going
can
off. You have to go back on the other computer because of all the other stuff he's got happening over in, is it Kentucky, wherever it was you just said.
Mark, you were a contestant on the Golden Bachelorette.
Well, one of many times.
Oh my god, absolute TV legend just sat with us right now.
It's very accomplished.
I'll tell you about with B afterwards. Yeah, well, it's partly right. It's actually saying that I was on Twin Souls podcast talking about AI. But that was a few years ago. But it also says I'm an author and paranormal investigator from Pennsylvania. I've never been to Pennsylvania in my life. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, you might be in Pennsylvania soon if you jump on the plane with me.
Oh my god, Andy, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that. Maybe it's telling you
Yeah,
you need to
sorry.
come to the Gettysburg Bash with us.
Do it.
Yeah, you do.
You were born in Norway, Andy?
Well, I'm not. This exactly. But this is the thing. So he's going to be getting kicked out soon anyway for keeping that app running. So you may as well come over to the States for a few days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Fortunately. Yeah. Yeah. That was months ago.
Just do it. Just do it.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I gotta-
I'd love to Pennsylvania.
Oh, it won't let me share it. It's too
Well,
long,
there we go.
Andy. You took over your family's farm?
Yeah, we have a.
Oh my
human
god.
farm.
That is the funniest comment. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That dude gave me COVID. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Everybody's a critic.
I think everybody needs to go make their own AI theme songs.
And then come back and then decide.
You should have a contest for your viewers.
Yes.
It's not fair because Baby with a Laser can make real music.
He says he can. I've heard one track. He's actually put that's 50 years of playing and practicing down the shitter. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm not even repeating that. Oh,
Well, this has got to go out on podcast. Oh, yeah.
you'll get demonetized. You'll get demonetized.
Get shot.
Oh my goodness.
All right, everybody,
Well,
the
no.
lesson we learned is wear a mask and use condom if you're going to make AI songs.
Right, there you go.
Hazmat. This hazmat suit.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
So I have put
Ah.
you're gonna really think that I'm strange. Well, I mean that's
More?
obvious. Right, that's obvious. I put a reminder in my phone 10 years from now
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
to see if Mark was on point with the 10-year advancement.
Yeah, well, that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying about quantum. That's what. Sorry, just saw that comment about hearing me.
No, they're bad. They're bad. Don't put the comments up.
Yeah, so that the
No.
quantum supremacy
No.
stuff is that's what they think. They think that they'll break that barrier, and then once they've done that, then everything changes. But
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of good benefits, but there's also a lot of bad benefits. One thing
Sure.
is that encryption nowadays is very difficult to break, and once you have quantum computers, then it can actually be broken. So companies are actually starting to try and make their quantum proof their technology already. But whether or not if it happens in 10 years' time, then we'll see we can see changes in AI. One thing that's really scary is that sorry.
I was just going to say, how could they make it quantum proof? Is that even possible?
There's something they could do to the chips, and I can't remember what it was, but some of the chips they could quantum proof somehow. I don't know what it is. I listened to a podcast, and they talked about trying to quantum proof their technology. There's some things they can do, like they can actually make, like using like you're talking about the slit experiment. They can actually see if messages have been observed.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how they quantum proof the hardware, but they did talk about it. There is some things they can do to make it a little bit less,
that's super interesting to me. That if we're looking at technology that can do that, why wouldn't we look at the paranormal in a more scientific way? You know what I mean? Like if they're using quantum physics,
maybe they are. We just don't know.
Well, the problem that you'd have with quantum physics, the main thing is, and I'm not a quantum physicist, but with quantum computing, what happens is that quantum computing is that they'll have a bit, so you don't have a 1 and a 0, but in quantum computing, they have something called superposition, where there's a thing between everything between 1 and 0, which is practically infinite from my understanding. And when somebody observes something, it breaks down into either a 1 or a 0. And this is where I find it interesting. You have to have some sort of consciousness actually observe that process for it to work. But the problem is that you can't. I'm not a scientist. The problem would be is that there are errors with that. Just now, that's one of the main issues with quantum computing is that it breaks too easily. So you'd have to have a really reliant system, and then you'd have to essentially take a quantum computer with all the liquid nitrogen that comes with it and stick it in a haunted house. But if you could do that, and like say for example, it started breaking down and you started getting results, then you have to make sure that this comes back to Einstein, who said, well, what sort of consciousness would actually break down superposition? Could it be like an ant had walked down, or a mouse, or something like that? So if you're able to factor out mice and ants and all that, and error corrections, then you'd maybe be able to say actually something observed that computer and actually broke it down to superposition. So potentially, yeah, but that's the only way I can think about how you actually definitively prove anything from a quantum physics point of view. But there's probably people far smarter than I will have better ideas.
Yeah, super interesting.
It's the one I listened to one podcast that said the less you understand quantum physics, the more you know. So I'll be expecting my PhD any day now. I don't have a clue.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, I've not got a clue. And do you know who is a really good person to speak to about quantum physics? Agnost. And he's actually Norwegian.
My brain.
So he lives I think he's in California, or is that on the West Coast? But he's from Norway. He's a pilot, and he explains about how time exists but doesn't exist.
Time is not real. Time does not exist. He hurts my brain with all his quantum theories.
Yeah.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's such a great guy to listen to. He's just,
What's his name? I've never heard of.
Agnost. So Aggenost. I've probably done 3, maybe 4 interviews with him. So if you scroll back and just type his name in, they'll come up. And he's such an interesting bloke.
Very.
Do you know what's interesting is that I've had experiences with UFOs throughout my life, and there was one encounter where I felt time sped up, and I was in my hometown. It's a small town called, fairly small town called Dundee in Scotland, and I was in a kind of a area that's kind of been abandoned, and I saw a UFO. Also, quite for just to shorten the story, it was like a UFO, but the clouds started moving faster. So it was like somebody just like pressed fast forward on a YouTube video. It was actually that was actually the most disconcerting part of it. Was actually seeing the clouds moving faster. It actually really terrified me. But I just ever since then felt that time didn't move differently when you encounter these things.
It's funny that you say that because I've had epilepsy since I was 10 years old, and I have what's called petit mal seizures. So I don't have grand mal seizures. It almost mimics like stroke. Okay, but and I'm sure you guys know, like people who have who are epileptic, they get like auras before having a seizure, and that's what Mark is describing is exactly what happens to me. Is like the time feels different. It sometimes slows down. Like if I'm moving at a normal pace, like just normal pace, it may feel like it's like in slow motion or sped up. So I find that super interesting. Yeah, because my whole concept of time is totally different because of that. You know. So then it goes back to like what I was saying about like neurological stuff too. In addition to like behavioral stuff. I think there's a whole neurological component to it, which I also think neurological deficiencies lend to mental health situations, diagnoses with people. So that's super interesting that you brought it up because I try to explain that to people and it sounds so foreign, and also like my sense of touch, like things will feel like that are solid, will feel like malleable or like clay-like feeling when I touch things. And that's how I know, okay, oh shit, it's about to go down. You know what I mean? But it's so interesting that Mark was saying that because that's what
the brain is such a weird thing that we don't really understand yet. Because like when I get migraines, before I get a migraine, sometimes I'll get an aura where I'm like seeing spots or seeing like colors, and that's how you know it's coming. Like your brain is kind of warning you that hey, something's gonna happen.
And it's super interesting, even more so that you said that because you've experienced something like that. You're into the paranormal. I've experienced something like that. I'm into the paranormal. Mark has experienced something like that. He's in the paranormal. I don't know about that guy up there.
Nothing. Now, I get a migraine and start feeling sick. That's it.
But have you ever had an experience where like, I don't know.
Voice notes, everyone.
Have you ever had like an experience where you felt like something physical and like paranormal activity kicked up because of it?
Was out on an investigation and it felt like I was pulled backwards and put in a bubble. Well, all this and everything slowed right down. That happened. Yeah. That was about what are we now 2025, so 2021. Be about 2022. That was about 3. It was just a couple of weeks after the bench guy incident.
What was the bench guy incident?
I'm sorry, Mark. What did you just say?
I'm not aware of this incident. Apologies.
So this guy. So this is from a live stream. That's what he looked like as I was talking to him. This is what he looked like watching it back, and that's not a reflection on the screen. That orange orb manifests in front of his face over, I think it's 13 frames before it becomes that big. As I'm walking away, I'm normal, like I'm chatting to you. I walk away, and I'm like, reality kicked in. I'm like, oh my God. And my first thought was, I've just spoke to the devil.
And
No
what about his
thought
voice?
in my mind. Right, so he had a strong Dutch accent, spoke really good English. Yeah, and he looked about mid-20s, say between 23 and 27. I had my GoPro on, like on a body harness, listened to the audio back on that. He sounded like an 80-year-old man, still with a Dutch accent. I'm talking to him for about a minute. I'm shining my torch. I thought it was the other guy that was with me, Mark. And I'm blinding him and talking, I'm so sorry, mate. I like explain what I was doing in the cemetery. And this is where I got this from. Because that's basically what he was sat like. He had the phone in his hand, but I'm looking at him from his left-hand side, looking across. So that's where that came from. And his face didn't glow up. Nothing like that. And he was just chatting away. And he's like, no, don't worry. You don't have to apologise. And it was near the war graves. So I'm looking at the headstones and the war graves. A lot of them are Czech, Pole, Eastern European, Belgium, Italian. The names on the headstones. I went back a few months ago and documented it. 2 gravestones are Czech. I think the pilots are servicemen. The rest of them are British names, English, like Barnett, Smith, Wilson.
And Benchai is the center square on every Andy bingo card.
But there was 3 rows of these war graves, solid, one end to the other. The last row is 2, 1, then a gap, and then I think it's 5 or 6. And I counted the steps in between, and there's like 22 steps between the one on its own and then the last lot. But if you watch the video of when I was there, that was a solid row of headstones. So that was some sort of time just slip. So there's something going on anyway.
That's mental. And you actually felt that the guy was the devil.
When I walked away, as I'm talking to him, I just thought it was some bloke on a bench. And I walked away and it's like that. I just spoke to the devil.
Why do you think that?
Well, then we met up with the other guy, and he because the bench guy said, "Oh, your mates just walked past." So I met up with Mark, and he went, "What, that bench there?" I went, "Yeah." He's like, "There's no one sat on there when I walked past." He was videoing it on his phone, so he took it back, and as he's walking past the bench, he's panning round. There's no one there. There's not even anyone. Yep. And the fact that he looked like this. As I'm talking to him, I'm only like 15, 20 feet away to this. But if you look really close, if you can see his eyes, he's got a long pointy chin and his nose comes to a point as well. And that was before I noticed that. I'm talking like 30 seconds after talking to him, I was convinced it was the devil. Now, he would have had to pass where me and Mark were. There's only the main driveway into the cemetery, a little gate in the bottom corner. I'd have to climb a fence to get out, and we did not see him leave.
That is crazy.
So, right?
Tell me about it.
I've had Sun Orange Orb right on January the 1st this year. It wasn't in the cemetery. It was just near Dykeman Woods. Dykeman Woods is a famous UFO spot in Scotland, but nothing like that. That's incredible. The only thing I've ever had, and this is for me, it gave me a lot of hope, was I saw what I believe was an angel in France, and I lost. Yeah. I think I've told you this story before. Just very quickly, I lost my wallet several hours before, and went to another town, really busy town, absolutely bustling. And this old woman just walks over to me. And I lost this miles away. This old woman came over to me, handed me the wallet, spoke to me in English. And I looked back. I couldn't believe it. And then when I looked back to her, she just disappeared.
Wow.
But that was quite positive, and it's given me I know it seems silly to me to say it to everybody, but it's given me a sense of hope that there's something positive out there. And it's probably more than just giving me a wallet back. It's given me like a sense of there's something positive there.
Well, that's kind of like this. Even though afterwards I thought it was the devil, it didn't frighten me. I wasn't unnerved or anything like that. I wasn't like, I've got to go home. I've got to lock myself away or anything like that. It was like, if it was, he's actually not a bad guy. Do you know what I mean? Because the depiction of Hollywood and I'll go there, the Bible and all that says that he's the bad guy and what have you, but it's just technically it's just the fallen angel that wanted to. Heaven's a bit too pristine. He wanted it a bit more rugged, I suppose.
He's a party boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyone who's watched Lucifer will understand.
All right. And on that note, all right, can we talk about where everybody can find Mark and Frankie and all their
Yes, because we've got like 30 seconds left. Yeah. So
you go first, Frankie. You
well, you could make it easy. You could find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at The Parasite Experience. We also do stuff at the Ritz Theaters. We're having this really cool event with My Haunted Manor USA. For the fans in the UK, it's My Haunted Project. So they do My Haunted Hotel, Pendle Hill, and so Daryl and the crew, they do in the United States. So we're having them come do a live taping of the show at the Ritz Theater, where we have our residency location.
Cool.
Not helping.
Yes. Nicole will be there.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm just I'm co-host of the Scottish Paranormal Podcast. So if you Google Scottish Paranormal Podcast, you'll see a few of our shows. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Cool. Thank you. Nicole?
I have an event this weekend that's coming up at Mazier Homestead in Wappingers. So that's going to be fun. Hopefully we'll get some good stuff.
Excellent. I am at a cryptid conference down in Somerset in the UK on the last weekend in May. So I'm there for the weekend, just meeting up with different people and Bigfoot researchers and all that. And then I'm going to be guest speaking. This is August the 17th. It's a Sunday, so I'm going to be guest speaking and vending, selling merchandise, basically. So it's this one. So it's Paracom, Back from the Dead, the zombie stage. And I think there's 16 speakers in total. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be meeting Frankie at Festival of the Unexplained in September. So we're going to be going out and teaching him how to drink the British way.
And I'm going to be hiding in Frankie's suitcase and coming over.
Yeah. And then Gettysburg and everything else in between. So there's a lot going on. And hopefully by the end of next week, I will be able to talk about this other thing that I've got coming up, which has done a big revamp as to me moaning about YouTube and all that the other week and whether to carry on with YouTube. I was never going to quit. I was just going to drop certain platforms, but carry on doing what I'm doing. But speaking to different people that are in a very similar predicament, we've kind of like thrown ideas at each other and we've come up with solutions. So it's all good. And I'm now back to being excited and raring to go again. So it's all good. Right. So we at the end. So we are at the end of the show. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Mark, for coming on. Absolute pleasure. We definitely need to make this a regular occurrence. You could even co-host. Who'd have thought?
No. You will be in 3 years' time.
No. Yeah. That's it. I'll come back on, but definitive no. I'm not co-host.
No.
Hey, you
Keep
guys
co-host until we do Lost Explorers.
Well, no,
You're
because
not letting AI win.
You guys have such great chemistry together, so you don't need anybody.
No, let's go. No, I get
We
you.
had like 7 co-hosts at one point.
Yeah.
And they all dropped.
Yeah, because they're all crap.
Oh,
No, they all understood.
shots fired, Andy.
No.
Fired.
I'm only messing. Sarah's great, but she's got loads of stuff going on out investigating. She does panto, she does musical theatre and all that, and a job and the kids. So I get all that. Other people are no longer here, but we won't go there with that one. Other people just blocked and deleted me on Facebook, and yeah, whatever.
That's the extent people will go through to get out of co-hosting with Andy. They're no longer on this realm.
So yeah, so thank you everyone so much for coming on. I am going to have to finish it off now. So we are back next week on Wednesday when we will have, I don't even know who's on, Paul Bartholomew, who wrote Bigfoot in New York. He's going to be on Wednesday, and Trey Hudson is going to be on Friday. So that's Mr. Skinwalker Ranch, or one of them. So join us for that. As I said, as of the beginning of May, any Fridays that we do will only be going out to YouTube memberships and Patreon memberships. So that's it. Right. So have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.
Cheers, guys.
See you later. Wrong one.
This episode will also be available as audio wherever you listen to your podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, etc., as well as being available on Audible. If you would like to help to support the channel, you can do this by joining the YouTube membership or Patreon, which both have a number of different tiers, or you can donate via PayPal. Links are in the channel description. Thanks for watching. See you
Goodbye.